Welcome to the Car Audio Education Series. Once more, I'm Brian Gantick. This is episode 8. Today, we're covering the wiring for an aftermarket audio amplifier. The wiring I can do a video on for an amplifier as opposed to speakers because amplifier installation is usually very much the same for most cars. There are 5 wires you need to know about. Your first wire is a power wire from the positive terminal of your battery, and that goes to your amplifier directly. Along this power wire that you have coming from your battery, you always want a fuse to protect your battery from short circuits of your amplifiers while you're installing things. I usually decide how big my fuse is going to be for that wire based on how many fuses are on the amps. If your amp has a 20 amp fuse on it, like this old Alpine amp, then I would put a 20 amp fuse on that power wire. If you have one of these and then like another subwoofer amp that has a 30 amp fuse on it, I'd put a 30 plus 20 amps would be 50 amps. So I'd put a 50 amp fuse on that wire. You never want this wire hooked up to your battery while you're installing. You want to connect this last. You should have your negative battery terminal removed while doing any electrical work on your car to prevent short circuits. And it's tough getting it into the car the way you want it to here. You have to find or make a hole going from inside your car to your engine bay, and you have to make sure that you don't hit anything in your engine bay while you're trying to screw this hole out. Only God knows what your problem might be if you hit something. Usually 4 gauge is a good wire for most standard applications. You also need a large ground wire. The ground wire goes from your amplifier to the frame of your car, somewhere where there's a lot of metal. And it mounts straight to metal, so you want to scratch the paint off of the place where you plan to stick this wire on your car. Again, this bolts directly to the frame. You'll have to screw into the metal of your car or find a bolt that's already being used that is into the frame of your car and use that as your grounding point. If you don't have a proper ground, a lot of things can go wrong with your system, and it can wreak a lot of havoc. You might end up blowing amplifiers, subwoofers, all sorts of very expensive things that you put into your system. So make sure this ground is very secure. The next wire you need to know about is a remote turn-on wire, and this can be a small wire. It doesn't have to be a small wire, but it can be, because it's not carrying power, it's just carrying a signal. When you installed your aftermarket head unit, there was an ACC on-off wire. You want to wire to that wire. Just run it from that ACC wire on your stereo head unit to your aftermarket amplifier. And the last 2 wires you should be concerned with are signal wires coming back from your head unit to your amplifier in the back, or wherever you have your amplifier. So you have a power wire, you have a ground wire, which are both big wires. You have a remote turn-on wire, and then you have 2 signal wires, left and right. Anyway, so those are the big wires, and the important wires specifically for an amplifier. The last thing you need to worry about or think about is how you're going to route speaker wires. Now, the correct way to do this is to take your door panels off or wherever your speakers are at and run completely new wires. Like, that's the technically correct way. Okay, but what works for most people is they run wires to where their old stereo was. Run new speaker wires from your amplifier, your new amplifier, and attach it where your old stereo speaker is plugged in. So at the back of your head unit, you grab the speaker wires that were coming from the speakers, attach the new amplifier speaker wires up there, and then run your RCAs from the head unit to the amplifier. Hope that's not too complicated. Make sure you get oxygen-free copper wire. It's better. That's my simple explanation. It's worth the price. It's worth the extra money. So anyway, this has been episode 8. I hope you kind of have a clue how to install an amplifier at this point.